Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of a post-game show on the Cold Front Report. Here to recap a huge 33-21 victory for the Buffalo Bills over the New England Patriots. But first and foremost, I'm your host, Clayton Garrett, and I have two talented individuals joining me as usual. First and foremost is Jeremy Turner, my company. Jeremy, how you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you? Talented. I haven't been called that. Guy named Hal Brown once let me go from Price Chopper Company. Said I wasn't too talented because he was wrong.
Oh yeah, at least in my opinion, he was my friend. But Travis, secondly, Travis Blakesley. Travis, how you doing, man? It was a good game today.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words and Merry Christmas, everyone out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a fun game to watch. Certainly, this offense felt like it got on some tracks that it hadn't been on in weeks past. Honestly, this offense felt as efficient as it ever has this season. There's just a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on the Bills' offense and their efficiency throughout the duration of this game?
Actually, it was no surprise to me, and maybe for a weird reason why. Sometimes when you're put in a position, and I was talking about this thing a couple weeks ago about Dable being offensive coordinator. When you take Beasley away, when you take Gabe Davis away, when you insert Isaiah McKenzie, you re-insert Zach Moss, you have to come out your comfort zone and you have to find ways to be creative. And I thought today was honestly probably his best offensive coaching performance of the season where we weren't playing a team that was just absolutely awful. You know what I mean? So I would say that it's no surprise. It's no surprise to me at all that the Bills came out and was efficient and effective all the way throughout this game just for that reason alone. Like, don't get me wrong. Jake Kumaro is an NFL receiver. Isaiah McKenzie has played in big time games for the Buffalo Bills. So it's no surprise that those guys, they're doing that, especially Isaiah McKenzie performed well. It was up to Brian Dable to do that today and get them in positions and put them in positions to do that. And he did that. He found a little bit of balance. Josh put his cape on, and the Bills went to New England, and they punched him in the mouth. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. It is the season of giving, and the Bills handed out an ass whooping today to the New England Patriots. It was definitely reassuring and very refreshing to watch, given how stagnant this offense has looked in certain weeks. The Bills didn't, they only had 15 carries going to running backs today, and I didn't feel like the running back room and their contribution was necessarily what brought this offense all together. But I'll get into that in a moment. Travis, what were your thoughts on how the Bills offense performed today?
Well, I thought it was their best overall performance, everything considered. I thought every time the Patriots punched back, we recouped and laid our own blow. I mean, there's many times in this season where we weren't able to answer the bell after a swing of momentum, and we were just stifling every ounce of comeback that the Patriots had in them. And like Jeremy said, it was a great showing on offense, specifically the play calling, the play design. I mentioned in the group chat, it's funny what happens when you bring a fast guy in motion and have him, moving laterally at the snap of the ball. Good things happen. And I mean, Isaiah McKenzie, Stephon Diggs, those guys on 3rd and 4th down, huge plays, very clutch. Josh Allen was, he had it all. He had it all going. He had the answers at every level, every aspect of the game, and the defense played their part. So it was the victory that the Bills fans needed, especially, and this team needed in order to position themselves when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, it was certainly a must-win today for the Bills. And the one thing that I really wanted to talk about coming out of this game was just the overall performance of the Bills' offensive line. And even when Deion Dawkins had to come in, because the initial plan was to have Spencer Brown play left tackle and to have Ryan Bates play left guard, unless I'm mistaken. And then you had your right. No, yeah, you had your right. Then you had your right side. But then after, excuse me, Ike Bacher was on the left side. After Ike Bacher went down, Deion Dawkins came in, and I thought Deion Dawkins played a great game. And all things considered, he was out. He was just brought off of the COVID list yesterday, and we don't really know what his symptoms were like. We don't really know how much he was suffering or how much there was to recover from necessarily. But the fact of the matter is, he came in and did what he needed to do, and he played a great game today. And the one player I really wanted to talk about was Ryan Bates, because he was the one player that I felt like this offensive line, at least along the interior, really hunkered down for Josh Allen and this offense. And it really kind of changed everything because Josh Allen has time to throw. The running backs have lanes to run in. The offensive line was maintaining possession of the line of scrimmage, which I've talked about week in and week out this year. And this was really the first game that I could come away saying that the Bills won the line of scrimmage and they maintained it for 4 quarters today. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on the Bills offensive line and specifically Ryan Bates?
Ryan Bates surprised me. I mean, I know this is a guy that we signed a couple years ago, and we know that can play all 5 positions along the offensive line, but we've never really seen him play except in very, very small sample sizes. So today, when I saw the lineup with Spencer Brown at left, Ryan Bates at the left guard position. I'm sorry, Ike Botter at the left guard position, Mitch Morse at center, Ryan Bates at the right guard, and Darrell Williams at right tackle. I was really worried because obviously we saw that the performance Spencer Brown had last week at left tackle, and it didn't leave you much to be confident about going in this game against New England. But obviously, the unfortunate injury to Ike Botter brought Deion Dawkins into action, like you said, and you made a good point about the COVID list. When we hear about these guys going to COVID list, we don't know if they're asymptomatic, if they have symptoms. Hell, we didn't know that John Feliciano was in the ER last week because of his COVID outbreak. So we have no idea what that actually entails. We just know that they're on the reserve list. I thought the offensive line played great. I thought this was the best game of the season. They kept Josh clean all day. They picked up the blitzes. Josh did a good job of when they were he knew which free release blitzer was coming today. You could tell on his passes, getting it out quick. I thought the offensive line played great today. I think you're really seeing that right side of the offensive line, that combo of obviously Mitch Morse on his right shade with Darrell Williams at right guard and Spencer Brown at right tackle. That's becoming a very forceful offensive line. You can see that chemistry building there. And yeah, Deion Dawkins, we can say Deion Dawkins, the Pro Bowler now, played at a Pro Bowl caliber level today. So congratulations to the Snowman getting his first Pro Bowl nod last week. Didn't get a chance to congratulate him on that. So best performance of the year for the offensive line. And if they can keep this going, this is what you need going into the playoffs and to make a deep playoff run. And to ultimately, hopefully, as I booked it a couple weeks ago, they're going to win out and win the AFC East.
Yeah, this is something I was talking about last week with Travis. Just overall, the disappointment I had that this offensive line couldn't have those last 4 games under their belt to really kind of gain that cohesiveness, to gain that the confidence of the players right to their left and right. And, you insert Ryan Bates, and it seems like a lot of problems were alleviated on this offensive line. And it's really interesting to me because Ryan Bates, when you watch, I went back and watched this game for a good portion of it between the end of the game and our show. And, you look at his technique, his form and pass pro and run blocking. He is a really refined technician along the interior. And you look at him, he doesn't really have the athletic stature. He doesn't have the gaudy athleticism for as much as other interior offensive linemen. But he is really good on his feet. And he's really well balanced, and he's really good at controlling his body and his leverage. And that's everything this Bills offensive line needs. It was night and day for me in weeks past in comparison today. Travis, what were your thoughts on the Bills offensive line as well as the performance of Ryan Bates?
Well, the insertion of Ryan Bates was no surprise to me. Me and EJ spoke about it. We both kind of predicted him being in the starting lineup if Deion Dawkins was not able to go. Now, the injury with Ike Botter kind of threw a little bit of a curveball, but it was good to see him be able to kind of move to the other side, and nothing was, his name wasn't called. So that's a good thing as an offensive lineman. I think just point blank period, this team and this unit specifically, they just got up for this game. I thought, although, we know the Bills don't have the most physical offensive line, but last year they were technicians. They were making switch calls. They were able to kind of be in sync when passing guys off. And I thought you saw that a lot. Like Jeremy mentioned, the blitz pickup was never an issue when they decided to go that way. They were able to handle the front 4, give Josh enough room to operate. And eventually, when you allowed Josh Allen to see those coverages for an extended amount of time, he's going to make you pay. And he was on the money. And I don't know what was keeping Dawkins out. I know maybe precautionary, but I mean, a blessing in disguise, I guess, with Bakker going down, because I mean, Deion Dawkins has been playing at an all-pro level, but he was phenomenal. I didn't see any rust. I didn't see him getting beat at all. So, you know, it just goes to show when you mentioned we spoke about this earlier in a previous show. You think just when you think you know what your weakness is and you're not going to get any better, they throw a performance like this. So, hats off to those guys. And let's hope that we can keep this cohesive unit and build upon it.
Yeah, and see that's the biggest question for me going forward into these last 2 weeks. I want to start with you, Travis. Do you think what would be your starting five going forward?
Well, I think we saw it. Feliciano, I mean, I think he's a guy that's going to be waiting in the wings. And if you do see some guys break down into, I guess it would be Bates or God forbid if Morse gets injured, one of those guys is going to be your backup center. But I think you see it, and especially really asserting yourself against a good defensive line. I mean, they don't have the top end pass rushers that we saw last week, but they're still a very good defensive line. I mean, Judon is no slouch, and he was completely invisible outside of tripping Josh Allen outside, when he was running to the sideline. It was just great to see. When you turn your weakness into a strength over a 7-day period. It just, like I said, it just goes to show you really don't know what's going on. I mean, you got Houston winning. It's been a wacky year, and I can't say I'm surprised that the offensive line picked it up, but it's certainly something I didn't see coming against this opponent.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. You look at this offensive line, and it bears the question to be asked: where's Ryan Bates been? Why hasn't he been in this lineup? Well, in my opinion, I thought that it seemed to me that they have been keeping him out of the lineup really because he's been primarily the backup center for Mitch Morse, and God forbid anything goes down for him, he has to go in there and relieve Mitch Morse. But I think at this point in time, at least in my opinion, it seems to be that John Feliciano is going to be the backup center going forward. Jeremy, what do you think? Who would be your starting five moving forward? Would it be this lineup that we saw today?
Yeah, I agree with Travis. I mean, offensive line play is all about cohesiveness. So, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's been broke all season. It's the first time it seemed like it wasn't bursting out the pipes. So let's just not change this. Let's just keep it the way it is. I would love to say let's insert John Feliciano back in there, but the honest opinion, he's missed way too much football up to this point. He's missed a lot of football in the offseason. He missed a lot of football earlier in the season, and then he was just an ER last week. At this point, he's an emergency option, and don't get me wrong, he's a great emergency option. We saw what happened with Deion Dawkins today, being able to play both guard spots and center. But I would keep it the way it is at this point and just move forward with what you have. I wouldn't shuffle this late in the season.
Yeah, it seems to me that this offensive line has just been shuffling nonstop throughout 3 months of this year. And if you were to alleviate that and bring a pause to that, and really kind of, as Travis was saying, turn your weakness into a strength overnight in the last 3 weeks of the season, that's a gift, man. And this offensive line, no, that's really what I wanted to bring up in the onset of the show, is to really, it wasn't necessarily, in my opinion, the balance that the offensive play calling had today, but more so the offensive line not necessarily allowing too many negative plays for this offense, whether it be sacks, whether it be, blown assignments up front to where the ball carrier is wrapped up by the defender almost immediately, but from taking the handoff. I felt like the Bills offense had hardly any negative plays today. And that goes to show you when they have 29 first downs and they didn't even punt once today. I thought the offense was lights out. And I think a lot of that has to do in credit for Isaiah McKenzie sliding into this receiver role that we saw him slide into today. Travis, what were your thoughts on how the Bills receiving core operated today with Josh Allen at the helm?
Well, I think they stepped up. They knew they needed to step up. It just seemed like every catch that McKenzie was getting, you saw him like a little saying out there. He was internalizing it all, and every big catch he made, he just seemed to come right back to the table for more. And you're a little scared with him landing on the ball, but he was back in the next play. Stephon Diggs always brings that dog mentality, and having him get in the end zone was great. Unfortunately, I think Emmanuel Sanders was kind of a product of just missing time. There was a handful of negative plays that he had. I mean, there was one play where he ran into Dawson Knox when Dawson Knox was running a seam route. Obviously, the drop. So outside of Emmanuel Sanders, I thought everyone did pretty well. You already have the calls of Cole Beasley is a little less of a necessity going into the offseason. And I mean, some people even say going forward, but you're going to hear a lot more of that. But you know what? Going in the playoffs, I would like my holster filled with all of them, and again, I just think that this coaching staff needs to trust with what's going right. When you have a guy step up, give him more reps. I know we'll get into it on defense in a little later, but we saw AJ Klein in there a lot more this week, even though they were throwing the ball more. We saw a lot more 4-3. So it's just, if this coaching staff can find what works, and it goes the same when you're on offense and you have all these weapons. Just figure out what works and keep going with it. And today it was the Isaiah McKenzie show.
Yeah, it was the Isaiah McKenzie show, and it really looked pretty good from our perspective. Eric Humphrey has Jeremy.
I'll be right back.
Okay, Jeremy wants to take a pause, so it'll be all right. And Eric Humphrey has a pretty good question here that I wanted to address. Question: do we go with Diggs, Davis, McKenzie from here on out? I tend to agree with Travis with what he said towards the end of his point. I'd rather have all of them in my holster if I could help it. Isaiah McKenzie, he really performed great today, but that's the question that you beg to ask. I think this is more of a question that we have to that we have to ask ourselves going into the offseason, moving forward, going into next year, more so than going forward. I think this offense, a lot of the pieces that you've seen implemented into this offense have been a part of it for such a long time. They have such a good chemistry of work and cohesiveness, working together with Josh Allen and this crew, and Chad Hall, their wide receiver coach, and working with one another in the offense. I really think that whoever's available and whoever really is the hottest hand at this point is going to be the receivers getting the targets. But in terms of Isaiah McKenzie, it was really interesting to me seeing him get plugged in and how Brian Daboll was using him. That was the biggest thing for me for Isaiah McKenzie, was how Brian Daboll was using him, how he was isolating him in coverage, how he was drawing up plays for Isaiah McKenzie to where, they'd be advantageous for Isaiah McKenzie. Because we've seen periods of time in the past where Isaiah McKenzie has slid into the slot receiver role in relief for Cole Beasley, and it hasn't worked out. And the reasons why it hasn't worked out is normally because he would have them running the very similar routes. And, there's not much difference between the routes that you can or will run, but more so along the lines of he would have him cutting into the middle of the field, taking those big hits from linebackers and ranging safeties. And I felt like, that's not really Isaiah McKenzie's game. He's not going to make difficult catch in traffic plays. Whereas, Cole Beasley, that's been how he's made his money throughout the duration of his career. We'll talk about what really the status of the Bill slot receiver room is going forward. But I just want to preface this with, I thought Brian Daboll did a great job today getting Isaiah McKenzie the ball in favorable situations, getting Isaiah McKenzie the ball in situations he knows that he would thrive in, and it wouldn't necessarily challenge him, and they would have to perform it despite to the play call. But the offense can work in unison, and the offense can work together the way it's designed to. Travis, what were your thoughts on how really Isaiah McKenzie was getting involved today with his 11 catches?
I think having him in motion is the biggest weapon that we could really have, the difference maker, especially today. And a lot last year, whether it was the pop passes, I know we ran one too many, but today, but when you get him moving left to right, and like you mentioned, a lot of his routes there, whether it's man or zone, if it's man, he's going to try to beat his man to the first down marker and, some sort of drag route or what have you. And then if it's in zone, you saw him find the soft spot in the zones and kind of just sit there. And Allen was very comfortable throwing him the ball. Those last two drives, I mean, he seemed to be the main target. So I think you're right as far as he can play slot, but he's going to play a different style of slot than Cole Beasley. And regardless of how this affects the sharehold of the wide receiver position, I think Isaiah McKenzie at the very least has earned back his trust of being in a cog in this offense, not just somebody who's going to be, window dressing, but somebody who's you're going to have to account for each and every snap. And when he's moving in the backfield, if he's moving across the formation, he's going to need to be accounted for. And when you start getting some of these star players back who have really, made a big difference in the Bills' offense the last year and a half, I think he's going to go he's going to be able to sneak under a lot of those coverages. So regardless, I don't think it's a good problem to have. And, let's just pump the brakes on what we're going to do next season until we get there.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Jeremy, you're the OG president of the Isaiah McKenzie fan club. So I know you were lighting up with his $125 for 11 catches today and a tutty. How are you feeling about Isaiah McKenzie and how Brian Dable used him? I was just talking about that during your brief intermission, but I was just talking about how Brian Dable is using him with the crossing routes. I alluded to it in our chat earlier. How did you feel the Bills used Isaiah McKenzie today, and what did you think of his performance?
I thought they used him properly. I thought they used him to his strengths. They weren't put him in a lot of one-on-one matchups to win. It was a lot of crossing routes going across the field and things of that such, like as Travis spoke on. I think the biggest difference that you saw between Isaiah McKenzie and Cole Beasley in this game was yak. Cole Beasley does not produce a whole lot of yak off his receptions. It's pretty much catch, maybe a yard or two extra. But you saw McKenzie's dominance in athleticism and speed over Cole Beasley with the turning the 7-yard catch into a 12-yard catch, or turning an 8-yard catch into the 13-yard catch, or even the 4-yard catch into a 7-yard catch. That was the difference. And those are differences. I think I saw at least 3 first downs today. Was just his pure speed to beat his man to the sticks or beat him to the corner and gain the first down. But yeah, Isaiah McKenzie played well. Now, I know a lot of Bills fans are going to say, well, what do we do with Cole Beasley after this season? And obviously, I'll tell you right now, Cole Beasley will not be on this Buffalo Bills roster come next year. They're going to save that $6.2 million. If nobody else want to say it, I'll be the first to say it. But Isaiah McKenzie won't be your answer either. And the reason he won't, because I think wherever Brian Dable gets a head coaching job at, Isaiah McKenzie will follow him there for a pretty decent free agency deal. So sorry for breaking your hearts there with the Bills fans, but that's just my opinion and my prediction in that phase. But I thought they used him well today. And I think that there's definitely a part in this offense. And I've been saying it since we can go back to when we blew the Jets out with Matt Barkley. There's a place for him in this offense. There's a place in this offense to at least get him 5 to 6 touches a game, or at least get 5 to 6 misdirection looks to move the defense around, to shift them around. Because I thought that was the biggest part about the day is because he was getting touches, you had to respect the motions. You had to respect where he was lining up at, and it opened other things up. So Isaiah played well today, and McKenzie, like I said, he stood out for us short guys. I actually got a chance to talk to him, I think, at 500 Pro maybe about a month and a half ago. Cool dude.
Yeah, just kind of going off your point there towards the end where you were alluding to the fact of just getting him involved in this offense and making teams account for him on the defensive side of the ball. Seeing how he was utilized today and seeing how, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that Isaiah McKenzie was going to be a pretty big part in the Bills receiving room today, given what happened earlier this week with the COVID list. But with that being said, I felt like it was far more vital for them to implement Isaiah McKenzie in an effective and efficient way that really kind of benefits his strengths versus weeks past where you've seen him slide into that slot role and seen him struggle at certain times when he's running the same routes over the middle like Cole Beasley, and he's being targeted on option routes and he's taking these huge hits that's not really the kind of player Isaiah McKenzie is. And, it leaves me curious as to whether the phasing out of Isaiah McKenzie is because of his quality or how good of a football player he is, or necessarily the lack of implementation from the offensive coordinator and how well he's been implemented into this offense. And it's funny because I was just talking about this last night at Christmas dinner. It was about, how they should use him coming out of the backfield almost as a satellite back more, and how just if he were implemented more effectively, then teams would have to account for him. And there's just a lot of things that work down the line, that work down the grapevine, that come in line with that. It opens up things for Diggs. It opens up things for Knox across the middle. And, there's a lot of things that impact a lot on this offense. And I felt like if you get Isaiah McKenzie involved in this offense and you make the defense account for him, then this offense really, there's limitless options for this offense and what they can do with the ball and who they can get it to, really.
Well, honestly, I'll be honest with you. I'll speak on that. I think the reason we don't use him and we haven't been using him is because obviously when the whole special teams thing didn't work out you knew it was going to be a problem putting Isaiah McKenzie on this roster or this game day roster every week. And it simply is a number. It's simply a number game. Just like we pounded the table for 2 years for TJ Yeldon, and we pounded the table for, I don't know, Matt Breida early in the year for carrying all 3 running backs on the roster. There's always going to be a problem with specific guys like Isaiah McKenzie that you can say, hey, they can help this offense, or possibly say we can help this defense. And they're going to be sat out because, unfortunately, we're that team that has, for some God of reason, carry like 9 to 10 defensive linemen a game. Then we have to carry another 5 to 6 safeties a game. And as long as we continue to do it, which is another reason I want to get away from this damn defensive line rotation, is we phase Isaiah McKenzie, players like Isaiah McKenzie, off our team because we have, for some reason, we have to do that. That's why he's phased out. And until we get away from that, until we're like a normal team and we say, hey, we're going to carry 6 defensive linemen and we're going to carry, you can still carry 5 safeties if you want. But if you want to carry 6 defensive linemen, then you would have that spot for extra running back, or you would have that spot for extra receiver that can help your offense. Because the name of the game is scoring points, and that's something that we do need to look into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point of the numbers game that the Bills really do have to play with their emphasis on special teams and their depth and their secondary and as well as their defensive front. This offense, it was really refreshing today. I just want to say that it was refreshing today to see this team come out there and really have fun. Because this offense, when they get going, when they're playing like they did today, and like I said at the onset of the show, this offense, it was as efficient today as it has been all season. And they were having fun, and they look really like this looks like a team that I'm comfortable with watching going into the playoffs. This looks like a team that I'm comfortable with lining up against whoever it may be in the AFC playoff bracket that they have to play, and I'd be confident with them. When this offense is executing on days such as today, then I really don't know a team that can stop the Bills, and the Patriots aren't one of them. Travis, what would be your final thoughts here to wrap up the conversation about the offense?
I just think that when the Bills don't beat themselves, just like you said, they can pretty much roll with anybody. I was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop on one of those, when New England was able to score a touchdown, and then we came back and we answered, and then they marched down the field, scored another touchdown, and we were in 3rd and long. And we've been in that situation a handful of times where we end up going 3 and out and punting, and we didn't see it today. 0 punts, something that has never been done against a Bill Belichick team. There's a little stat that was brought up earlier where the last 2 times Josh Allen has played in Gillette, he was 57 for 83, 7 touchdowns, 630 yards through the air, 99 on the ground, and 71 total points. That kind of sounds like a guy who used to come up to Orchard Park and terrorize us in our home stadium. So let's hope that's a precursor to what's to come for the next 18 years.
Yeah, one can only hope. I mean, it has to swing back some other way. I mean, 20 years, the Bills should be able to have 20
pendulum
years, right?
Swinging back.
Yep, yeah. It's got to balance out at some point. Just another MVP day for Josh Allen, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what else is there to say about him? Like this game, these last handful of games, and I think really any time that the Bills come down a stretch like this, where the importance is just it couldn't be any more important for the team. In games like today, where the Bills are really playing for their own lives and they control their destiny, well, whenever it's in Josh Allen's control, I don't think there's really anybody who has any kind of lacking faith, and that's amongst Bills Mafia, that's amongst people in that locker room and a part of the organization. If it comes down to a drive, it really, we've seen times in the past where Josh Allen hasn't produced, but I think in situations such as today, where this team is really playing for their life and really trying to cling on to the AFC title, I have nothing but faith in Josh Allen going out there and executing, doing MVP things like he does every single week. It's crazy to watch. What were you gonna say, Jeremy?
No, I mean, I thought it was a greup performance on offense, just like Trav. They utilized weapons. They went into New England. They told New England, up, and they did. And it's nothing against Patriot fans or the Patriots in general. But there's no football field in 2021 where you can step onto where there's the elements are not just favoring the Patriots where we can't throw the ball or something like it was up here in Buffalo, and New England can beat us. They're not a better football team. Mind you, nothing against them. McCorkle has played well this year. McCorkle has played decently for a rookie quarterback, okay? But let's not go crowning him and saying he's better than Tua or better than Josh Allen, because he's not. I don't know if he's better than Zach Wilson at this point. But no, McCorkle has done a decent job of running that team and running what Bill wanted him to do. But there's no day in 2021 or even probably even 2022 where he's going to go out there and out gunsling Josh Allen with inclement weather. It ain't going to happen. So Corky, yes, my man James Bilek said, could take his L and go home. Because if you thought that this is what Buffalo Bills football was, playing them in 45 mile per winds and running the ball, passing the ball only 3 times, and you're smiling and laughing like that was your W, man, go somewhere. You still should have lost that game. Sorry, Corks. It's over.
Absolutely. Speaking of Corks and speaking of what he was up against today, 3 touchdowns for Damian Harris. This Bills defense, they did what they needed to do on that side of the ball. I thought it was a good game. They were without Star Latulippe again. I feel like we talk about that every single week. According to the broadcast, it was personal. It was a personal issue. So I really don't. You know what? That's a good conversation to have at the onset of the defensive performance discussion. Do you guys think that Star Latulippe wish he retired at some point? Because I really feel like he's at that point in his career. I think he wanted to retire and he didn't.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on. All the talk about him feeling like a new guy and coming in the offseason. Well, it's different when you're playing in December. And obviously he held out because of COVID, and now it's rearing its head around even, arguably more so than it was prior. And, maybe he is having those fleeting feelings. But you want to know what? That's leaving the door open for guys like Harrison Phillips, who keeps, at least on a run defense level, he's making plays. Anku, every now and then you see him make a play. So, you know what? It is what it is. And, I don't think at the beginning of the season, everyone thought everything hinged on Star stopping the run. I don't think that's the key. I think when the Bills get caught over pursuing or they don't fill the gaps, you see the 25, 30-yard run. And 7 or 8 times out of 10, that doesn't happen. So, my concern is not with whether or not Star Latulippe plays or not. I think we got guys who filled a similar role behind him. I'd be more concerned if it was a guy like Ed Oliver, who is playing at a high level, and I think he is our best interior defensive lineman. So to answer your question, I don't know. Maybe he is having some second thoughts. Maybe something happened around, close to the family. Who knows?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. But with that being said, like you said, Travis, the Bills' defensive line doesn't seem to be missing it these last couple of weeks, especially today when you play with solid gap integrity and you have players stepping up like Phillips and like Eli Ankou. Like Jeremy said on the last show that he was on, he said that Eli Ankou can provide just as much impact as Star Latulippe for a fraction of the cost. And that was a concern I had. That was a concern I had going to today slightly. And then I saw Eli Ankou go out there and maintain his gap for 3 snaps in a row. And it's almost like, the Bills have been overpaying for that role on their defensive line for the last 3 years. And a handful of people have been saying that. But it's okay because the Bills defensive line, they look good. And if Star Latulippe plans on playing football again this season, then I'd rather have him fresh going to the playoffs. Or, we might not need him at all. It seems to be.
Fresh. He should be the freshest throughout the whole damn organization. He's just as fresh as Brandon Beane. He ain't played in like 26 games over the last 2 years. And I think he got
younger.
Yeah, he got younger. The man then lost weight and running around hitting the drills. He ready to train for the damn draft combine again. So fresh. I mean, at the end of the day, man. Listen, if we were hinging our team on stopping the run with the return to Star Latulippe, then you were looking for a ride, like a hitchhiker on the side of the road, because that just simply wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. And I'm back to my old Star Latulippe bashing ways. I'm back. Yeah, I tried to give it a chance. I want it to be nice. It's that is over. It's done. It's that ship has sailed. As I said before, Bills fans, mark your calendar for June 1st, 2022. That will be designated as Star Latulele Day because that is the day that we will cut him officially, and we will save that $5.4 million, and he will no longer be a headache of ours. Listen, I get it. I don't know what happened with him, and I don't even want to sound like be that fan or that analyst or that guy that says it doesn't matter what happens to your family. But dude, we're paying you like $10 million a year, and you've missed like 20 something games over the last 2 years. Whatever it is, and I'm sorry, God forgive me. Get your ass on the football field and go to work. Go to your job. It's your damn job. Okay? You have enough money to whatever is going on, someone else can handle it for you for about $100,000 and you ain't gonna miss it. I'm done. At this point, if EIN keeps like this, then make him inactive and let him walk away from Buffalo silently. Do I think he wants to retire? No. And if you guys ever want to have a conversation about this, have this conversation with James Mallory because he's been in NFL locker room. He'll tell you what percentage of players inside of NFL locker room or in NFL do not actually love the game of football. They don't like playing the game of football. They do it because they're good at it and they make a ton of money. That has been Star Latulele. I think that he came back in the beginning of the season. He was generally happy to be back on the football field. He missed it, and he got to about week 3 or 4, and he said, I don't want to deal with this. Beep. I don't want to be out here. I don't be out here running these laps and going to practice. And you know what? There he is. He gone again. I'm done, man. Get him out of here. Inactivate him. I don't care. June 2nd, 2022 will be Star Latulele Day. Star Latulele Day in Buffalo. He will be cut. Just like we used to. Just like we waited for the Bills to cut or trade Darius. Y'all should be double time happy to get rid of Star Latulele. Goodbye and good riddance.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of that as you went on there. By the way, bravo. We haven't seen the Star Latulele anything like that all season, and that sums it up right there. But you know, I was thinking about it. It hasn't been really hard for the Bills to get out of a deal like this. I really couldn't even recall. You know, you traded Darius, and you know there was contracts that the Bills have given out that they really regret. Honestly, could have regret more than they regret the Star Latulele deal. And this one just it has locked them up for 5 years. And this Bills defense, you know, I felt like he looked pretty good this year, and I thought that he was what he could provide was certainly it was closer to that $9 million price tag, but not nearly close to it, not nearly as close to it as it should have been. But you know, this Bills defensive line hasn't been suffering without him, and today was not an exception. Travis, what were your thoughts on how this defense performed today against the Patriots, and what were your thoughts on their run fits and how they were able to really kind of, you know, stifle Damian Harris where they could? Obviously, they drove down the field and got 3 touchdowns towards the goal line. But what were really your implication, or what was your impression on the Bills defense today?
Yeah, I mean, it was business as usual, in my opinion. Everyone's going to be up in arms about the run game. You're giving up another 100-yard rusher. Yeah, well, we're also only giving up 145 yards through the air with 2 interceptions to boot. So with Damian Harris with 3 yards over 100, I mean, Mac Jones was their second leading rusher with 33. It was a solid performance. You got the young guys, Dane Jackson stepping in, and, you know, he's no Trey White, but he's not leaving this team vulnerable in any area. Now, they're not going against world beaters at the wide receiver position, but they did just fine against Tampa Bay before all the injuries happened over there. So that's been great to see. You know, obviously with both coaches, the head coach and the defensive coordinator, both being defensive backs, it's good to see that, you know, it's really showing in spades when you get down to the bottom end of the roster on that side of the ball. The one thing that really has been bothering me a little bit is just when we try to rush 4 men, it's not always good. I mean, there's a handful of times where Mac Jones just had too much time to throw. There's a couple times where he made a big scramble for a first down. But then again, and this goes back to Jeremy's point, I look who's on the field, and they have all of their third rotational guys in. It's just at what point do you need to bring those guys in the third quarter of a game, or the end of the second half? I don't think they're that gassed, especially this game where we dominated the time of possession, to really have the bottom of the barrel, not necessarily the bottom of the barrel, but the lower ends of that rotation. You got Obata over there who can't keep his
He's
hands clean
undisciplined.
from yeah, I mean, he couldn't. The cookie jar is open, and he was going for it every time. And that's how you get beat by this team, where they'll scheme you to death. And I was in a group chat, and people were complaining about those outside runs, and I'm like, it's one guy making a mistake. Everyone else is doing their job. One guy made a mistake, and that's what it is.
That's all it takes is one guy outside, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought there were some times where this Bills defense, they bent, but they didn't necessarily break today. I thought, obviously, as you touched on, those outside those toss plays that they were really getting them on in the first couple series of the game, those had an impact, but not a lingering impact. They weren't running those all for 4 quarters. So the Bills made the adjustments necessary that they needed to. Hey, I'm going to keep this going because I can't get off the screen here on the Cold Front Report without talking about how good Ed Oliver is at football. Yeah, Ed Oliver continues to be disruptive along the interior, continues to do his job and what he was drafted here to do. He is making such an impact. He is wrecking players or plays along the interior, and he is wreaking havoc, crashing into the backfield. The one thing that I'm going to be I'm going to watch going into the playoffs is to see how much of that tenacity that opposing teams use against him in trap plays and trying to get him to fly upfield and really use his discipline against him if they can. But there, at certain points in time, Ed Oliver looks like he's one of the best players on that defensive line. And really, I think he's the cog that keeps this defensive line threatening, because you think of players, we've talked about the rotation tirelessly with the defensive ends and the lack of production that they have with players such as Addison and Hughes. And, Rousseau has been a player, but he hasn't necessarily been producing. Ed Oliver really is that piece to me on that defensive line that teams really have to account for when you play the Bills.
Yeah, I think Ed, it's no surprise. Ed was picking. We've seen spurts of this, right? We've seen spurts of it in each of his first 2 years. Last year, we said he's going to come out better in his third year, just the simple fact that he's playing way out of his position. He's not playing his right technique. He's taking on more double teams because they could do that to us, because that other guy who opted out last year and is not here still was not there to help him. So therefore, it's almost like, as I made the same analogy in our group chat earlier when we were talking about Spencer Brown kicking from left tackle last week in the beginning of this game back to right tackle. It's almost like playing Madden and putting the game on all Madden and then losing and then putting it on all pro. It's a lot easier for you. It slows down. Everything becomes easier. And I think that's what you've seen with Ed. He's getting it. He's always had all-world talent. He just had to put together. And he's doing that now. And now the big thing about him is you have to find him his running mate. Who's going to be that guy on the inside that he's going to be able to look next to him and say, I'm depending on you. And that guy's going to look back, because there's a lot of teams around the league that have that. And I think that's the last thing they're missing, is that pure defensive tackle that's somewhat of a game wrecker, but that's going to keep the linebacker core clean as well. Because one thing about the Bills is they're never going to be a pure shut down the run team just because they run out of a nickel base. Okay, I want people to understand that. When we play power running teams, and this can go on for a couple of years, we're always going to struggle at times because we run out of a nickel base. Even today, when we started this game and we had AJ Klein, I was actually surprised to see that we were running a three linebacker set. It seemed awkward. It seemed awkward for him. It seemed awkward for the defensive backs. And I know that I think on one of those plays on the cutback lane, one of the cutback lanes that I know people were blaming Tremaine Edmonds for, Tremaine picked up the guard like he was supposed to. And I think it was Dane Jackson and Teron Johnson just completely overran the play. And Damon Harris just kept going. So with Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds at linebacker, and not having a one tech and running out of a nickel base, we're always kind of going to struggle. But our end-to-end speed, sideline to sideline speed, is what's going to help us out. And Ed Oliver, obviously, he's probably, if he's not the quickest defensive tackle in the league, he's definitely top 4 in being quick as defensive tackles in the league. And he's going to blow stuff up. And now he's going to start bringing the sacks too. Don't be wrong. He's going to get that into his game. He's going to start getting sacks. You're going to see his sack total start rising. He's going to start getting about 5 to 5.5 in a season. And then he's going to be the guy that we thought we got with that draft pick.
Do you give him the 5th-year option, or do you extend him straight up?
I give him the 5th-year option. I still want to see the work put in. I think too with this regime has not been the type regime that just gave the extension of a 5th-year option. Even Trey White, Josh Allen, and who else got the 5th-year? Well, Tremaine Edmonds, so I think he'll get an extension.
Yeah,
their 5th-year option is still built into that contract extension they got. So the Bills don't skip that.
Yeah. Yeah. Ed Oliver, he is earning his money. And like you said, Jeremy, well, honestly, I feel like Ed is a player where, once he starts to get confident, you really can't bring him down. Once he gets going, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. He's dangerous for any offensive line to really to match up against. He's been so explosive. He's been very violent with his hands, the tenacity that he's been playing football with over the last really 7 or 8 weeks. Honestly, for the last 2 years, he's been playing this way. You just haven't noticed it up until this point. But Ed Oliver, he's really good at football. He's a pretty good football player. I'm really excited that he's on the Bills defensive line, because I think he's what makes this Bills defensive line a threatening to some point. Like Travis was mentioning, they struggle with 4. Ed Oliver is one of the 4 that doesn't struggle. This was a fun game. This is a really fun game to watch. It was a really fun game to watch these guys win. Like I was saying earlier in the show, it was really refreshing to see these guys go out there and play fast and play physical and have fun, because this is just such a fun team to watch. When they were rolling on all cylinders today. Travis, any parting words, any final thoughts on the Bills and where they stand before they match up with the Falcons next week?
Well, we've taken care of business. We all knew this was a 4-game season after we lost to Tampa Bay. So 2 games down, 2 games ago. I just want to give, a little shout out to the Patriots for babysitting the AFC East throne for the last couple weeks. You guys got your publicity. You make it almost impossible to watch ESPN or the NFL Network the last week. Thank you for warming the seats up, but we'll take it from here.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels good for the Bills to reclaim their spot atop the AFC East. Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, they went in New England. This is the way it's supposed to happen. There's a proper way. Can you go back into ancient time, Roman times, Greek times, to properly dethrone someone? And I said last year that the NFL schedules booked the Bills to play late New England on purpose to do a proper dethroning. And guess what? Last year, people said, no, the New England opted out. They had Cam Newton and blah, blah. And I give that to you. That wasn't proper. That wasn't the way to do it. So then we were supposed to do it this year. Then we come to Monday Night Football and we get 45-mile-per winds. We can't even throw the ball or kick field goals. And McCorkle throws the ball only 3 times. So in order to do it properly, we had to go into Foxborough and kick the hell out of them. And I'm sorry to say it that way, because that's what happened. We kicked the hell out of them. They were befuddled. They played to the best of their abilities, but the best of the abilities of the New England Patriots with this team that they have with McCorkle, and I'm going to keep calling his middle name, McCorkle at quarterback, is 21 to 24 points. And you're simply not going to be the Buffalo Bills team with 21 to 24 points. So this was a proper dethroning. Now we need to go into Atlanta, beat Atlanta, get to the Jets, let them say 1, 2, 3 Cancun, get them out of there, win the AFC East, go into the playoff game, have a home playoff game, and let's work our way getting back to Kansas City, because Kansas City is going to wrap the number 1 seed. And I tell you the truth, I hope that we see this Patriots one more time. And I know that is a very dangerous thing to do in any league, is to play a team 3 times in a season. But Hoodie don't scare me. Hoodie don't scare me. McDermott showed today that he was not scared of him, and I could tell. I was waiting to see the post-game handshake, and Bill didn't look at him in his eyes. See, there was how when it's like you have a friend or a brother, and the sibling's a little younger, and you always beating them, so it's a mutual respect. Oh yeah, he's a great coach, great player, great person. And then that sibling or person starts inching closer and closer. Well, now McDermott has almost fully taken the baton out of his hands, and he got a problem with it. There's going to be some unpleasantries in the near future because he ain't going to be able to handle it. And today I saw that with the post-game handshake, couldn't look in his face, had the handshake and walk away. It's not our fault you got McCorkle back there. You chose him. The guy is average at best, and you've done nothing to progress him as a quarterback. And I'm sorry to go off the tangent like this, but I have to say this. You have done nothing to progress him from week 1 to week 16, and you want him to play this Bills team at Foxborough just like you did the teams he's playing in week 2 and week 3. That ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. So, yeah, and Dave Coulis, right? He does have mad respect for Josh Allen because he has no choice because Josh's going to be kicking your ass for as long as you're in New England. You're correct. You have no choice but to have respect for somebody who's going to continue to kick your ass. And he's seen it today, and he's going to see it 2 times next year and 2 times the year after that. Just like I said, the reason he went spent out the most guaranteed money in history of the NFL this offseason is because Josh Allen is here in Buffalo and he's scared. That's something he can't coach against. Bill Belichick has never seen something or someone he couldn't coach against. But guess what? He can't coach against Josh Allen. So congratulations to the Buffalo Bills. This is the proper way to dethrone them, to go kick their ass up in Foxborough. And if anybody watched the broadcast, I want you to rewind as the clock's run out. You could hear the Bills Mafia chanting up in New England. Go ahead, guys. Enjoy your billboard and go get you some clam chowder on your way out.
Oh, yeah.
Love you, Jeremy.
Oh, yeah. I love it. I love when the Bills beat the Patriots in New England. The handshake was different. I caught that too. I caught the difference between the handshake when he was really happy after the Patriots won in Buffalo, and then today it was just your stout pouty Bill. Excuse me.
Because it wasn't we beat ourselves, Bill Belichick. This was, we can't beat this team. If they're on their game, we can't beat this team.
I really hope the Bills see the Patriots again. I've seen that floating around the interwebs. People talking about the way the seeding could line up, and if the Bills play them again, if they play them again, I'd be happy to go there and watch the Bills. Watch the Bills send the Patriots packing one more time. That it would be really great. I don't think the Bills would lose to the Patriots in the playoffs, not by a shot.
You gonna sign Tom Brady for a game? Oh, that's against league rules. Can't do that. Not afraid of you. Sorry.
Yeah. So it was a fun game. It was an even more fun show. I want to thank the Bills Mafia for, coming in the chat and blowing up these comments, having a plenty for us to talk about. It was a fun game to watch. I hope everybody enjoyed their weekend, enjoyed their holidays, and they have a safe and happy New Year. Stay safe, be responsible. It was an exciting game, and the Bills have reclaimed their place atop the AFC East, and hopefully that's where they stay for the foreseeable future as they reeled up to play these last 2 games and go into the playoffs. With that being said, be sure to follow the Colford Report on Instagram at Colford Report _Bills News. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Colford Report. If you want to follow any of us, our handles, as you can see them on the screen, you can also find them in the description below. The links will take you right to our Twitter pages, and you can follow us right there. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page and share the show whenever you see us go live. We always have content coming out here on the Colford Report. I want to say thank you to everybody for staying tuned and watching throughout the whole duration of the show. And stay safe, stay healthy, and go Bills.
Down with McCorkle.